Hello, my name is Mackenzie. This is my channel, Think Too Much. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I wanted to talk about dieting, specifically my relationship with dieting and how it's evolved as I've become older. I'm about 27 years old, and I just had a really sorted relationship with food in most of my teens and wasn't really able to break out of it until I was in college, so probably around the time of 20. Food was kind of the enemy. I wasn't really sure how to live and eat in a healthy way without making it all about my body and how skinny I was. And honestly, people would talk about kind of food as something that they forget about eating, or food as something that they don't crave when they're not actually hungry. And I just could not imagine what that must be like. And I'm kind of now that person. Listen, sometimes I want to eat out of boredom, but I don't often want to do that. I'm in tune with my body. So I wanted to kind of talk about that because I think that my experiences mirror a lot of other people's experiences. And honestly, I think I would have loved to have stumbled upon a video like this when I was 16 and really in the thick of it, and just have someone help guide me out of that weird little mind fuck rut thing. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. All right, so first off, I'm going to give you a brief history of my relationship with food then and now. So when I was a teenager, around the time I was 14 actually, that was the first time I was thinking about food as kind of something to put in your body for health and wellness, because I had a health class and I feel it fucked me up. It taught me valuable lessons, but it also fucked with my head a little bit, because I think that was kind of the first time that my perfectionism could really latch on to eating as a practice, now that I had this set of knowledge and information that I could kind of almost use against myself. And I think diet culture as a whole was something that I would have definitely been privy to by that point, and also kind of shaded the way I thought about food and the kind of black and white nature with which I regarded food. So health class kind of kicked off what actually ended up becoming a bit of an eating disorder called orthorexia. And orthorexia, I'll pause for adding the definition here. Orthorexia is basically, it's kind of binging and purging, but rather than purging by throwing up, you're over-exercising and under consuming food. So basically I essentially what the cycle ended up looking like was me under eating during the school week. So I was under eating during the work week, and then on the weekend I would kind of indulge all of the cravings that I had gathered over the week, and would just eat a ton. So that was kind of the binging. And then the work week there was purging, and I would work out multiple times a day, especially on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at the beginning of the week to make up for the weekend, which paired with the underconsumption of food was just not a good recipe. What it was a good recipe for was losing a lot of weight very quickly, and just immense cravings. I have never craved sugar the way that I did when I was in the midst of this eating disorder. So that was the eating disorder part. And then when that became unsustainable, which it inevitably did, because even while I was doing it, I remembered thinking I'm really not going to be able to do this forever. All I think about is food. All I care about is food. I'm sad, I'm tired, I feel terrible. Right, so we get to the point where it's no longer sustainable. And at this point, I was I wanted to wean myself off of it. So my answer was to try to eat as healthy as possible and not limit the healthy foods. It's limit the unhealthy foods, but don't limit the healthy foods. I actually started counting calories when I started doing this. I think it was a means of maintaining that control while kind of facilitating the inclusion of more food. I started gaining weight because my metabolism was screaming for nutrients and survival, whatever. I started gaining weight. It really freaked me out. And then that kind of kicked off a cycle of yo-yo dieting. From that point, I think it was less than a year of the eating disorder. And then I think from 15, 16 to 19, I was kind of trapped in this vicious cycle of yo-yo dieting. And if you're unfamiliar with yo-yo dieting is basically starting new diets, crashing and failing at the diets, and then starting a new one. The reason it's so compatible with perfectionism is because it kind of gives you the opportunity to start new, start fresh. The next week, it's usually for me, I'd be all right, I failed the diet by the end of the week. We're going to start a new one on Monday, and it's going to be perfect, and I'm going to follow it perfectly, and I'm not going to hate myself, and all my problems will be gone. And during this period, I was like kind of slowly gaining the weight that I had lost back, which was I think it's hard for a lot of people to experience, just because like as a culture, we're too focused on like how other people's bodies look. And so no matter what, I don't know, it's like your insecurities are going to go haywire if your body is changing, and it's changing in a way that like, you know, you read as bad and that you think others will think makes you ugly. One thing I did want to mention for the period, especially kind of pulling myself out of the eating disorder, was that I was recommended this book called Intuitive Eating, which posited that if you listen to your body, it's going to tell you what you need in terms of nutrients, in terms of whatever. And like, I am probably imperfectly paraphrasing this because it's been years since I read it. Basically, the takeaway I had from the book was that you can learn to get in touch with your body and what your body needs, and your body will just kind of tell you. It'll like give you the signs, and that like culturally we're kind of told to ignore it, and that like, you know, mind above matter, like our brains know better, and so we need to force this whatever. But you know, the authors basically posited like, no, your body like knows what it needs in terms of like nutrients in order to like maintain its health. That's like how survival works. That's how adaptation has worked, blah, 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 blah. And so you can kind of come upon a diet that is born of intuitive eating. So this book definitely informed kind of how I approached the like post eating disorder recovery. And I think it also, even though I couldn't necessarily stick with their prescription at that point, I think it gave me insights and like lessons that I was able to pull from later on in life. So I guess I'll circle back to that. But yeah, the yo-yo dieting kind of persisted until I was in college. And in college, I think I just started getting worse at the diets. Like, I think at first I was like more successful in the diets, and then like slowly but surely, as I just fucking messed up my metabolism like more and more and more, it was just kind of impossible. And I also think it's like you're losing morale. It's like harder to will yourself to like do a good job because you failed so many times. And I'm sure this was a period that like helped kind of solidify various like self narratives that like continue to be a bother to me today, like lazy, like no follow through, blah 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 blah. I'm sure. I got to a point where I just hated my relationship with food. I hated my body, I hated myself, like all of these things. And it really took, and this is gonna sound silly, but I counseled for a summer camp my freshman year, like between freshman year and sophomore year. And it was a very active summer camp, and it was like kind of intense. Like these kids were badasses. They were like going on like multi-day hikes, and they were like doing these like, what are those called? Obstacle courses, where they're having to fucking climb a wall. Like at some point we had to help them like climb a wall that had like, it was just a wall. Like there was just wood. There was no like handles. It was like, we all had to like lift the kids over this wall and then figure out how to get the last person up. But I counseled for this camp, and you know, like, because we're having the campers do all of this physical stuff, and I was with some of the older campers, obviously I was also challenged to these like nature adventures and multi-day hikes, and it really instilled like a confidence in myself that I hadn't had in a while, because like my exercise had kind of like fallen off because like I had such a sordid relationship with it. It just kind of petered out. My understanding of like what healthy eating was, my like eating for the sake of like nourishing my body, if it ever existed, petered out. And like this was kind of the first like glimmer of self-confidence that I got back. And kind of once I had that, it definitely like kick-started and got the ball rolling on like me figuring out how to just like reestablish a positive relationship with food and exercise. This isn't like, oh, I feel amazing because like I'm orthorexic, and even though I like hate myself and everything, like no, it was like I feel good about myself and I want more of this. So basically I came away from that. I was like, I'm going to keep on with this like kind of exercise high. Like I think I'm in better shape than when I got there. And then I wanted to eat healthy, and I didn't know how to do that without dieting. I didn't know how to do that without counting calories. And so something I'd kind of landed on, and it was something I'd considered in high school, but was just never really able to enact, was veganism and vegetarianism, but I think most specifically veganism. I knew that I didn't want to approach veganism in the same way that I had approached dieting, because I was so burnt out on dieting, and it made me feel so bad, and I knew that. But I also knew that I genuinely thought that like veganism could be a like healthy way of eating and living, and I just like really believed in it. And honestly, I still do. Again, I'm not a scientist. Don't take this as science because I don't know. But I was trying to figure out how to approach it in a way that wouldn't kind of turn into this like really sordid black and white relationship, or wouldn't crash and burn. So I kind of decided like, all right, I will start with vegetarianism. I'll like, get my hands a little dirty, see how I feel about vegetarianism. I did that, I think, for about like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And I was finding that, to supplement for like the meat that I couldn't have, I was eating more like dairy products. And I just wasn't feeling that great. I think maybe I was feeling a little bit better, and like it was nice to have that like sense of control, because, even though like part of the problem with dieting was this like need for control, I think it was like the control plus the perfectionism. And so I just kind of found that like the little bit of control that like a label like vegetarian allowed me to feel like I had was almost like a hack for my brain, where it was like, no, but it's okay. Like, this is vegetarianism. This is like inherently healthier. Again, not sure if that's true, but at the time it worked. But I found that like the cheese, it felt like supplementing like cheese for me was not going to be the like health fix that I wanted. And that's kind of when I landed on veganism, but not like full force veganism. That's when I landed on, I think it's called flexitarianism. I called it like mostly vegan. And I just kind of decided, it was like, okay, I am going to be vegan for like most of my meals in a given week. And when I want dairy or meat, I'm going to eat it. And that's just it. And like maybe if we're going to put a metric to it, 80-20. I can't tell you if that was literally the metric I had at the time. Like, I don't know. But it was just really important for me to be able to pursue this like eating lifestyle in a way that didn't feel overly perfectionistic, and in a way that didn't make me feel like I was going without. And so that's what I landed on. And I have been mostly vegan ever since. This was 8 years ago. And honestly, the hack continues to work. I feel like I just watched my relationship with food get so much better. And kind of like I said at the beginning, like all of a sudden, like when I'm eating a meal, like I'm eating for satiation. Sure, I'm totally eating for pleasure as well. Like, don't get me wrong. Like me and Max get like fondue. I live in New York. The food here is amazing. Like I do not feel limited by this like kind of half-ass veganism lifestyle. Like I eat what I want genuinely, and I genuinely feel that way. The label of kind of half-ass veganism is like the bomb that I could use to kind of like satiate and satisfy my brain. So it's like, even when I had those thoughts, even when I have those thoughts currently, if I like have those thoughts that it's like, oh no, like, on vacation I'm eating like particularly unhealthy, and this isn't perfect, by the way. I just kind of know I have the fallback. It's like, well, when I get home, like we're gonna go back to the mostly vegan, and like everything's gonna balance out, and like that's gonna be on net like a positive for my body. And I should also add that like veganism won't necessarily, it's like not for everyone. And I've heard countless stories of like, oh my God, my body started shutting down. This is not a prescription for veganism, but if you found that your relationship with food was like mine when I was a teenager, and you found that you're kind of perfectionistic and you think it might be a bit of a control thing, this is a prescription to like find the like eating style that you genuinely think is healthy, that your brain will be like, yes, that's healthy. Find that and figure out how to do it in a way that isn't overly stringent. Figure out a food style that you can lean on, that you will be able to tell yourself in the periods where you're like eating more sweets or just don't have access to as much healthy stuff, whatever, that you can be like, no, but it's fine. Because for the most part, I am confident that I put good foods in my body. And I know that I'm treating my body well. And I'll tell you, even at the time, that's at the beginning, it was not about weight loss. That was still absolutely in the forefront of my mind. Good or bad, that was the deal. But I was able to tell myself like, okay, but I'm eating healthy foods. So if my weight is an unhealthy one, it'll balance out to a healthy one. And I'm on my way to it, because my lifestyle is conducive to that. And if I stick with it, I know that that's going to be the case. And I'm not lying to you, like I lost weight over several years, by the way. And eventually I just kind of landed on, a weight that I've kind of maintained pretty consistently. And for the most part, like I don't have a perfect relationship with my body, but I have a much better one with my body. And I feel really confident about the food that I eat and the lifestyle that I lead. So that's my cute little food journey. Yeah, if you're kind of like me when I was a teenager, or even if you're not quite that, but you recognize those tendencies, I guess this is me offering, like, that's what I did, and it helped a lot. And I can genuinely say I have a really good relationship with food now. And it's that in and of itself is confidence building. You know, I'm so proud of that. It's amazing. I never thought I would have that. So I hope this helps you with yours. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed.